Hello, I'm Thomas Canavan, Executive Director of the National Law Enforcement Museum. I'm pleased to welcome you to today's program, Bridging the Badge, Strengthening Asian American Community Trust in Law Enforcement, which is generously sponsored by Target. Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders constitute only 2% of the nation's law enforcement officers, a stark contrast to their significant presence in many urban communities. Additionally, the AAPI community contains a multitude of diverse cultures with distinct values that, when integrated within the law enforcement profession, officers serve as both pillars of their community and inspiration for the next generation. In today's program, our panelists will discuss successful strategies that have been implemented in various departments to increase the number of officers from the AAPI community. Before I turn it over to our panel, we will hear some brief opening remarks from our sponsor, Target. Thank you, and we hope that you enjoy Bridging the Badge, Strengthening Asian American Community Trust in Law Enforcement.
Hello, my name is Ellie Chong, Director of Assets Protection in the California market. It is an honor to join you today as we celebrate Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. This month is a time to recognize and honor the rich history, cultures, and significant contributions of the AAPI community to our society. This month is also an opportunity for us to strengthen our relationships with the AAPI community. By fostering trust and understanding, we can work together to ensure the safety and well-being of all community members. On behalf of Target, I would like to thank our law enforcement partners for our commitment to leadership and public service, and for helping Target keep our guests, team members, and community safe. Thank you.
All right. So hello, everyone. My name is Anna Muckenfoos. I am the Director of Programs here at the National Law Enforcement Museum. We're pleased to welcome you to today's program, Strengthening Asian American Community Trust in Law Enforcement. This program today is sponsored by Target, and we're very grateful that they've made the space for us to have this conversation today. So I'm joined by three really great panelists who are going to discuss some successful strategies that have been implemented in various departments to promote the representation of AAPI demographics within their ranks and the communities that they serve. But before we get into our conversation, I'm going to give the panelists a chance to introduce themselves. So we'll start with Shane.
Hi, my name is Shane Liu. I'm the president of the National Asian Peace Officers Association, also known as the POA. I am based here in Washington, D.C. I'm currently employed by the Department of Homeland Security. I'm a senior agent.
All right, Kang.
Hi, I'm King Her. I'm currently with the St. Paul Police Department in Minnesota. I have been an officer for 12 years on patrol, and currently I'm in the gang and gun unit, or their firearms assault support team. So I work during the afternoon period time.
Very cool. And Victor?
Hi, folks. My name is Victor Yang. I work with the St. Paul Police Department as well as with gang. I'm one of the community engagement specialists here in the department, working in the community partnerships unit. I've been here for roughly over 6 months now, but I've been doing a lot more community work for over the last 10 years.
So welcome to all three of you. We're really happy to have you here today. This is our first program that we've done for AAPI Heritage Month. So we're really happy to be expanding our programming and offering this further glimpse into law enforcement. One of the things that I've really liked about our programs this year is that we've really focused on different areas of cultural communities within our society, and trying to talk about kind of looking at the ways that law enforcement departments and our officers are really reflecting the communities that they serve. Because in my opinion, at least, and I know that that's shared by a lot of people that work here at the museum, our communities are best served by our law enforcement officers if the community and the officers that make up our ranks really are reflective of one another. So we're really excited to talk about the AAPI community today and all of your roles in supporting both officers of AAPI heritage, but also the AAPI communities within your neighborhoods. So welcome, and thank you all for joining us. So let's get started with our first question. Asian Americans make up 7% of the overall U.S. population, but only 2% of our country's law enforcement officers. within the AAPI community, there are drastically different cultural beliefs. So Shane, would you mind giving us a bit of a background on how different areas of the AAPI community view members of their communities serving in law enforcement careers and how it affects the recruitment of officers from those communities?
Well, most people think of Asians, they think Chinese, Korean, Japanese, Thai, Filipinos. But Asia, if you look at Asia as a whole, we cover so much more than just that. We cover, even the Central Asia, the Indians, Hindus, religious faith, even the Indians who are Punjabi Sikhs. They are also part of our organization, but also the Asian community. But then you throw in, the island Pacificers, from Hawaii to Tonga to Samoa. It is not just, when you think about it, Chinese, Korean, Japanese. Overall, every culture is very different. Some push for higher education. You have a lot of Asian Americans that come over here, first generation, second generation, but especially the first generation that come here, they want their kids to find the American dream. And what is that? And the parents' vision of American dream might be, doctor, CPA, attorney, IT. Definitely not law enforcement. But that does not apply to every culture of Asia, right? From the Filipinos, the Vietnamese. But then we also have the Hmongs. And most people do not even know what a Hmong is. They are very different. And I'm going to let these two gentlemen talk about that culture there.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things with, I'm just talking about Minnesota in general. I grew up in St. Paul. My family, they were refugees from Laos and they went to Thailand, and that's where I was born. And then that's why we were able to come to the United States. One of the big things in Minnesota right now is for the Hmong people in Minnesota, we've been here for 50 years and we've progressed so much. Kind of like what Shane said, there's family members that push us to be doctors and attorneys, lawyers, and all that stuff. It's great. But there's other people that are very smart too, but they also want to go into a field where they can actually affect the whole community as a whole. So law enforcement gives those population like myself and Shane and other people that I know another avenue to pursue. And it's a great career. It's one of those careers that you can make it your own. It's also something that relates to team aspects. And a lot of us that grew up in the inner cities, we like that stuff. We hung out with our friends and we like to be around other people, like-minded people, and we want to enjoy our time together. And law enforcement is one of those fields that I can see that it greatly enhanced my abilities as an officer and also as a person. So, and talking about just smaller minority Asian communities in Minnesota right now, there's a smaller community that are refugees that came from Myanmar that went to Thailand. This group is called the Karen community. There's other smaller groups associated with that group, so that's the group that we focused on in the last couple of years now, because we can see them coming up. They're going through the same troubles as the Hmong folks went through back in the 90s, where there was gang violence, people trying to find opportunities to do things, and also for protection. So this is the group that we're kind of focused on now, because they're just in that limbo of like, what do we do now? We're in that age of 19 to 30 years old. What do we do with our career? So we're trying to grab those kids and push them into law enforcement too. If they're not going to go towards the educational portion of it, at least come towards us. We can guide them down that path to be law enforcement officers.
Yeah,
Gang answered everything there. Sorry.
No, you're fine. I know that, and we'll probably talk about it a little bit later as well, but I know you've worked with a lot of youth outreach programs and things of that nature. Do you have and you're working as a civilian employee within the St. Paul Police Department. What do you kind of notice when you're talking to younger people from the AAPI community in St. Paul? Like, what are their kind of views on a potential law enforcement career? Have you seen anything kind of shift in that 10 years that you've worked in that field, or has it stayed relatively the same?
Well, I would say like 10 years ago, there was I think there was a bigger rise in uptick, I'd just say, with younger folks who identify as AAPI to become in law enforcement. But then ever since, the unrest in 2020, especially here in Minnesota, there's been kind of like a lot of stigma behind the police department, regardless if it's Minneapolis, St. Paul, Brooklyn Center, any of the surrounding suburbs in the Twin Cities. So we saw a shift go down towards youth work. They didn't want to work. My youth didn't want to deal with law enforcement. They were afraid. But for me, because I do have family members who are in law enforcement, I was trying to tell them, they're just people too.
Mhm.
There's good apples, there's bad apples, but it's also have to identify that, law enforcement is there to help you. And there are ways to talk to law enforcement to hold them accountable, and aspects of, if you really want to know what they do, go talk to them. And if you feel like they are not keeping you safe, what are things we can do to talk to law enforcement, keep us safe? So that was like the discussion there from 2020 and gone forward. But now working here in the police department, I have um, I have the opportunity to go out into schools and reach the kids and say, hey, I'm not a police officer. I'm not a sworn officer. I'm just like you. I might wear a uniform, but at the end of the day, I'm just a regular human being. I've been working with you forever, youth forever. And like they see it not just like, oh, it's not just everybody with a gun, or that's how the visibility of it, right? They see that, oh, it's actually community members who are assisting the department to find different solutions in law enforcement, or different, yeah. And I think one of the best things too, when we talk about recruitment, so a lot of kids always ask themselves, like, how long does it take to get a cop, like to become a cop? Like, I believe in St. Paul, we require like a 2-year degree in criminal justice, and then we always tell them, we always give them the what do you call, like a test, like a quiz, and say, how much do you think an officer makes, per year, per salary? And, hands go up saying, only $40,000, $50,000. And then when we tell them what the big number is, from like I believe right now it's 85 to 100K. Right now, all their hands go up and say, I want to work in law enforcement, because it's a different avenue, right? You don't have to do a 4-year degree. It's a 2-year degree plus post skills and the other requirements, and then you're already making close to 6 figures coming out the gate, And so we always say, take this opportunity to, help your family get out from what we used to could be in the inner cities.
Absolutely. And Shane, you were about to say something. I cut you off. I'm
That's
sorry.
great. No, you're fine. You're fine. Oh, there's so many stories I can sit here and tell about, members all around the country. That's just, and I'll tell one's very important. It's about Winston Liu. I'm not sure if you remember that name. Winston Liu was one of the 2 officers that was assassinated in New York. Well, a lot of people don't know that Winston Liu, he immigrated here with his family. He was not born here. He was born in China. And again, his parents wanted to push him into the American dream, but he wanted to serve his new country. And the best way to serve, he believed, was joining the NYPD. And there are many stories like it, Winston Liu, out there. That's how they wanted to give back to their adopted country. Just like myself, just like Kang, right? We all wanted to give back to our adopted country. I was born in Korea, and I'm adopted by a Chinese American, So yes, we all wanted to give back. It's the way we serve. Some serve through the military, some serve through law enforcement, to protect our communities, but to also be a role model for the next generation. But again, every culture has their different struggles. I have a good friend. He was going to college, and he was going to be a business major. And when he graduated, he decided to join law enforcement. And his parents almost disowned him, right? And he works at Fairfax here in Virginia. Obviously, they still talk to him, but they were very disappointed in him up until he made captain. And now he's an assistant chief here at Fairfax, and they are so proud of him. But it took him 15 years, right? They didn't understand, like, yes, this is an honorable job, right? They wanted him to own a business or work at a Fortune 500 company. But he works at one of the biggest police departments in the nation. It's a part of Major City Chiefs. And he is now an assistant chief over there. He's doing great. But that's the struggle with every culture within the Asian communities. Some, again, Like the Filipinos, they want to serve in the military. They want to serve in law enforcement, but not every culture within Asia wants that, because again, the American dream is what their parents see on TV, or doctors and things like that. But yes.
Absolutely. And as kind of a follow-up question to talking about cultural upbringings and influencing our decisions and our career paths, I'd love to know from each of you, what made you want to pursue a career in law enforcement? Was it at all tied to your cultural upbringing, or was it completely separate?
I'll go first.
Shane. We'll just go in order again. Yeah.
That's fine.
Yeah.
So my father, he was in the military, but he also, when he got out of the military, he joined the government, and he worked at a specific agency I can't say, but under DHS. And I followed his footsteps right after 9/11. I was 26 years old, and I've been here for almost 24 years in October. And it's one way to serve our country after the 9/11 attacks. He kind of talked me out of joining the military. He says, there's opportunity here at this agency. And I followed his opinion, and 24 years later, so I'm still here. And because of that, I found organizations like NAPOA. So yeah.
Absolutely. And we will get into NAPOA very soon. Kang, go ahead.
Yeah, so I didn't do military or anything like that. I went to school, kind of like the Asian American dream. I wanted to be a computer science major, so that's when I went to my first year in college. I found out really quickly that wasn't what I wanted to do. Math, I was good at math, but it was to the point where it's above my pay grade for math on that point when I went to college. So I quickly found out that maybe the first year in college wasn't me. I dropped out, came back home, very disappointed. My parents were upset that I left school and I dropped out, had a bunch of money that I needed to pay back. So I went straight to work, did a assembly job for a year and a half. The person that drew me down that route was my cousin. Him and I sat down one time and had a cup of coffee together and sat down, and his expression to me was, "What do you want to do? I want to engage you and also see if you want to do anything related to any field that you're open to." So I expressed that maybe law enforcement. So I started taking classes and started doing that stuff, and I found out that I truly love that stuff. It's a team aspect. It's something that I feel really prideful about, and also it's an integrity thing too. You want to do the right things for the right reason. So that's how I went into law enforcement, and that's how I got into the St. Paul Police Department.
And Victor?
I can talk all day about this. So when I was younger, well, like maybe 6, 7, 8 years old, my uncle Jimmy actually became a cop, and he was like one of the first Hmong guys I ever saw become a cop, growing up. And he's always told me, like, if you ever need something, you can call me. You want something to do, you can call me. So growing up and seeing him becoming like the first Hmong sergeant, and then now the first Hmong male commander here in Minnesota, especially at the St. Paul Police Department, has kind of like influenced me. And also, like, he's been such a great role model, showing that we can do a lot of great work in serving our communities. And me being very community oriented, helping with different AAPI groups, getting them to register to vote, civic engagement work, community work, uplifting public policy stuff. I felt like this was a perfect opportunity to become, working in law enforcement. Say there is a need right now that needs to be shown that law enforcement is not what people think it is, and helping people. What's the word I want to try to say? Like, helping people realize that law enforcement is just another avenue or another resource for people can use. It's such a beautiful thing, because it's always serving the community as my purpose, like how I always felt my purpose was. And coming here and finding like all the resources we have and helping people has always been my big dream.
Absolutely. And I think that's, I really like how you kind of summarized that it's a role to show people that law enforcement is more than just arresting criminals and taking them to jail. It's a resource for the community, and it's a way to kind of give back to your community and be involved and make a difference beyond just making sure that crime isn't happening or investigating crime when it happens. And I think that's a very important story we've been trying to tell at the museum too. So it's good. those kinds of roles existing out in our communities. Yeah.
Yeah. My colleague Chacha always tells me that, the St. Paul Police Department or any police departments in general is like such a great resource that no one has tapped into, because we have all these connections with different organizations that we want to help with. But if they were just to tap in just to the police department itself, they could get access to so many different resources out there.
Absolutely. And to kind of get into recruitment of officers, getting more AAPI community members involved into the police department. We're going to start at the state level with Kang. So your organization, which is the Minnesota Asian Peace Officers Association, is working to not only build relationships between law enforcement and Asian communities within your state, but also to recruit and retain talented, multilingual, and educated Asian law enforcement professionals. So what strategy has MNAPOA utilized to promote more Asian officers in law enforcement?
Yeah, so I'll go back a little bit before my time, before I started. So our organization started in 2008. There was a small collective group of Asian officers in St. Paul that found a need, that they saw that there wasn't much retention or even recruitment of Asian officers in St. Paul. The population in St. Paul, especially where I grew up, it's majority Asians. So it's like there's a pool of people there that the department can reach out to and recruit those folks. There wasn't much of that being done in St. Paul. So that group that started our Minnesota Asian Peace Officer Association started that group to also recruit Asian officers into law enforcement, also to promote our officers into law enforcement. So they noticed that there's a lot of officers would apply for a sergeant's test and not do well, and then they'll get passed over or some other things like that. So from that point on, 2008, that's where we started gaining more officers in St. Paul, Minneapolis, the surrounding agencies. And when I came on in 2013 in St. Paul, there was a good amount of Asian officers throughout the metro area. But from that point on, it just kind of accelerated to the point where more and more each academy that we had in St. Paul or Minneapolis would have 1 or 2 or 3, 4 Asian officers in there. So that continued to grow each year until today's date. So one of the biggest things that we do in our organization is that we want to promote our agency and also promote Asian officers to apply for our agency. So the surrounding areas where I'm located, the metro area, like Ramsey County, Hennepin County, the big populations in St. Paul, Minnesota, we do our best because we have a lot of officers from our associations and sergeants from our associations that are coordinating the recruitment portion of that. We do things like ride-alongs. We do things as show and tells. We want to grab those kids and also those younger juveniles that want to go in law enforcement or even military to maybe guide them down that path, show them that we've done it. I've been here for 12 years. I've done the hard things, the patrol work, the investigative work. Now you guys can do it. We've paved the path for those folks to come up and do great things. One of the biggest things we always do is that we want to try to reach the cadets or even community service officers, CSOs, and we want to grab a hold of them too, because one of the biggest things in Minnesota is that if you have a CSO, they're trained up by the department, they're getting very close to being an officer, then another agency will come in and scoop them up. So for us, we want to try to, whoever's in that agency, we want to try to have that officer just kind of focus on that person and try to guide them, mentor them so that they can focus and come into that agencies and they'll do well. I think throughout the years, myself in St. Paul, I was part of the recruiting team for many years. And what I try to do is to give a true aspect of what I do in a day of a patrol. So when I was on patrol, I would start my shift at 4 p.m. and end at 2 a.m. And I would show them, yep, every day, 4 p.m. You show up. If you're going to go for a ride along, come with me. And I will show you the 8-hour shift, because a lot of times at the end of the day, it's a wind down. So I'll show them all the way until midnight. This is what I do every day. It's doable. You just have to see what I do. And I'll also with the officers that I work with, it's very doable for any person coming to this field. And if you have this right aspect and right mindset to be a good officer, you'll do well. So I think we've done good in that recruiting portion of it. And we're always bringing new members from our Asian background and also from a variety of other backgrounds. You don't have to be Asian to be in our organization. So we take pride in that because we want the best to be in our organization, also to push our organization forward.
Absolutely. And I mean, you've mentioned the ride-alongs that you do and that you've gotten a good response to that. What have some of those responses been?
Yeah, so my last year on patrol in 2023, I went full blown. Like, if you want to ride along, if I meet you at the hospital and if you're a law enforcement student and you're a security officer, I'll give them my card and say, hey, contact me. I will give you a ride along and I'll show you that St. Paul is probably one of the best departments for you to go to. So I gave, I think, at least 7 or 8 ride alongs that year. And I think maybe 6 or 7 of them came to St. Paul over the years. So it was, for my thought, to get that amount of people to come into our department during that time was great, because it was during that time where my academy was 25 people in that academy. Ever since 2020, when COVID and George Floyd happened, it dropped down to maybe like 10 or 6, and it was like, where are all the candidates at? So to get more people coming in that are interested and are local, that was my idea. To say, hey, it's great to have a guy from 200 miles away come here to St. Paul and do good, but it's also better to have someone that understands the culture, understands the city, to come and say, oh yeah, I know this area because I grew up here, my family grew up over there. I think it makes it easier for them to understand and adjust.
And as I was looking at the website for your organization, you really do emphasize wanting officers that are multilingual and encouraging people that speak different languages to become officers as well. It might seem like a pretty obvious question, but what benefits does it provide the department if an officer is multilingual and able to communicate with members of the community within their own language?
I think besides the communication piece of it, for easier communication, but it shows representation, right? Like what Gang mentioned before, the Karen and Karenni population who just came from Myanmar and from Thailand, because they're so new here, we only have so many officers here in the department that speak their language, right? And just having them be that communication aspect, or just having them being that representation, is amazing, because now it shows that, it's not just some random, person that's being, I'll say, like, it's not just some, Caucasian person becoming a cop or majority of the police force, right? People who look like us are part of the police force. And if they look like us, I trust you more. That's what the community sees, right? People who see or identify people who are better represented in the department itself, and when they see someone who looks like them and is them, it just makes things so much easier, right?
Absolutely. And I think being able to, and you summarize that really well, it's very different, especially because we usually call the police when we're in an emergency or something's going wrong and we need help. Somebody's going to be a lot more calm in the face of an experience like that if someone can speak to them in their language, if they look like them, if they're just if they feel like they're just as represented as everyone else. So I think that was a great answer. Yeah. But I just asked, and Victor answered the question pretty well. The kind of, if you wanted to chime in a little bit on your organization really emphasizes the importance of having officers that are multilingual, that speak the languages of the people that are in their community. Did you want to comment on that at all? And how important?
I'll just say a little. It's a very beneficial trait to have and skill to have, because I think in the Hmong community and the Karen community, we see a lot of that going on right now, because not so much in the Hmong community now, but you still get calls where people are new to the country, they only speak Hmong, so it's good to have that person go and speak. And the same thing with the Karen community. Myself, they know that I'm Asian. They don't know if I'm from their background, but they'll know right away when we start speaking that we're not Karen. So it's great to have a Karen officer to go and speak to, or even to be in law enforcement, because um, they're going to be the first generation cops in law enforcement, and we need them to do a great job because it's going to set in stone for the following people to come in and also set a precedent so that they can do better. So I think that if we encourage those officers that we have right now that speak a second language that can do a great job, it's going to encourage future officers from that community to come in and also do a much better job than what we are doing now.
Absolutely. And Shane, your organization, the National Asian Peace Officers Association, is a nationwide organization for members of the law enforcement community who identify with or share an interest in Asian culture or heritage. So what's your organization doing, similar to MNAOPA, on the national level to recruit and support AAPI officers?
Well, I mean, every year we have a conference, right? And we do have recruitment tables there from local PDs. Federal, this year might be a little more challenging from the federal perspective. But, you know, the stories that Kang is saying from Minnesota, that's no different than any other part of the country. But you have to understand the country first, right? Half of the Asian population in America is in the West Coast. The other quarter is in the Northeast. Then you have 25% spread out. I mean, you're talking about Minnesota, Chicago, Houston, Dallas, even outside of Atlanta, there's huge Asian communities, but they don't even make up 25% of the rest of the country. And again, I'm reading the name of an officer that was killed who was Vietnamese from Iowa. We don't have a presence there. So we're very limited in that sense, you know, outside of the 25%, right? Within the 25%, the rest of the country. But, you know, again, it's no different. Where I was at Boston last year at the IECP, and I was walking on the exhibitor floor, and I was walking with a young lady who was she's a communication director of Fulton County Sheriff's Office, and she introduced me to a police chief of a county in Georgia, and she introduces me as the president of NAPOA, and he looks at me, he's like, we need some help. I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, we need help hiring Asian officers. In his county, it was right next to a new Kia car factory, and the Asian community is really exploding there, but he has no representation within his county, and he needs some help. But think about that. That's just one county. There's multiple counties like that throughout this country. So on the national level, we're looking to, you know, team up with departments around the country in the future to where we can assist with recruitment. And how is that? Well, if you're telling me that there's a big Korean community in Georgia, well, we can send representation from our organization down there to help engage and talk about law enforcement. And these officers could be from LAPD, they could be from NYPD, they could be from Minnesota. But that's one way we can help, right? But this is not just, you know, a Minnesota thing or a New York thing. This is throughout the whole country itself. Just look NYPD. There's what, 20-some, almost 30,000 officers there. But almost 5,000 in that department alone recognizes Asian American Pacific Islanders in some way, shape or form. That's a lot, right? That's 5,000 is more than most departments in this nation. But even there, that's still a small percentage. So yeah, there are a lot of issues. It is hard to recruit them if you don't have any officers who are Asian. But that's where we're looking to fill that gap. I'll tell you one story where this is in Texas. Local PD there was trying to recruit some Sikhs, right? The Punjabi Sikhs. The Sikhs are a religious group, right? It's the fifth biggest religion in the world. And their community was huge, but they had no representation in the police department. Well, this police department went to one of the temples and was trying to pitch. Well, a Sikh man ended up joining the police force, and he was killed in line of duty, sad to say, about 4 or 5 years ago on a routine traffic stop. He was killed. But what happened after that? You had more individuals from that Sikh community wanting to join the police department. But on the national level, that's something that we're looking to get more involved with and helping departments around the country to recruit more Asian Americans. But we only cover, again, the West Coast primarily, Northeast, and pockets throughout, the rest of the country, the 25% that we don't represent. But this is not the first time I've heard this. Representation of your community is definitely huge, right? There's crimes that are committed in the community, within the community, maybe not outside of it, but within it, that they're afraid to talk to police for whatever reasons. But there's no difference between Asians and Hispanics or African American, or even Eastern European. There's no difference there. It's just, how do you reach them? How do you reach the community? That's something, again, we're looking into. But also, that's where you tap into the resources that are available, like the Asian commerce. That's a big one right there that a lot of departments don't realize they could tap into, reaching them to talk to the Asian business leaders to help recruitment. So, overall, we're looking to move that way in the future, to help these departments. But how do we do that is by putting ourselves out there as an organization, like going to the IACP, going to the NSA, going to small town rural cities where they represent majority of the police force in our nation. So yeah.
Absolutely. And I guess one really good follow-up question for that would be, if anybody here who's watching today's program, if they would want to learn more about your organizations, learn about the programs you offer, how to become a member, things of that nature, where should they look?
So our website is nopoablue.com, right? Minnesota chapter is part of one of our 24 chapters we have right now, and we're growing, right? It's not just here in the US, but we're branching out to Canada. That's another untapped area that we're looking to grow, to help them organize and to recruit as well. But our information on our website's there with all of our chapters for membership.
Our website is mnapoa.org. We've had this website for a while now, and we also have a Facebook. It's Minnesota Asian Peace Officer Association. So come and check us out. There's a lot of updated information, anything related to promotion, recruitment. We try our best to put it on our Facebook. The website's mainly for other purposes, but the Facebook is the most current thing we have that we use.
As a good way to kind of put everything together, we've talked about recruiting officers from the AAPI community and touched a little bit on the importance of having officers from the AAPI community to serve the AAPI community within our major city or within our cities around the country, and things like that. But let's talk about how we're actually serving those members of the AAPI community. And I think, Victor, you're going to play a very big role in answering these questions. So your role as a community engagement specialist with the St. Paul Police Department gives you a very unique perspective on this panel. Could you explain your role within the St. Paul Police Department and the work that you and your staff do to support the officers of your department and the community at large?
My role as a community engagement specialist, I mean, it varies, right? I need to be essentially a community liaison from the department and the API community. So whether that be, going to organizations, talking with community leaders, talking to, Shane mentioned like the Chamber of Commerce or, different areas. How do I send a message of what the chief is saying and bring that to the community, and how can the community get their point of view and bring that to the chief's office? So there's a lot of different avenues. Like we'll host meetings, we'll go and then just have lunch and just talk about what are the things you see in the community that we need to change. So like the biggest one right now is that we just actually had a meeting not too long ago with Hmong 18 Council, which is like the big leadership for the Hmong community here in the Twin Cities. They were worried about IC deportations, right? And they came to us saying, what is St. Paul PD's role in that? And we're just telling them, well, it doesn't, we have nothing to do with ICE, right? Our only job and our only care is to protect and serve the community. So regardless of not if they are undocumented or not, they still can call us because we don't ask for their immigration status. So we just want to clarify things like that. So things like that I'll help facilitate, or make sure the chief's office knows, or go tell get the message from our department to the community. But the fun things I like the most about my job is connecting with, different community leaders and just going out and hearing their stories and see what kind of resources they need. Not too long ago, me and some of my staff, we went over to a school, right, for just a regular outreach event, just sharing out recruitment, like, oh, here's a program for cadets, here's a program to become an explorer. But then we also work with the local hospital to give out free car seats, or I shouldn't say free car seats, but to assist them with doing a car seat clinic. So this first family comes in, we see them with a little 4-year-old girl. We're asking, hey, do you have a car seat installed? Do you know if your car seat's installed correctly? We're asking the family, and she tells us we don't even have a car seat, and we're just saying to ourselves, what? No, you can't. No way you don't have a car seat. So I'm there with my laptop. Okay, you were signing up for their next car seat clinic. The next 4 families come around, same thing. They don't know the language, they don't know the laws, so they didn't even know they needed a car seat because they've just immigrated from whatever country they came from, right? So now having these resources and seeing that the families in need and showing that this is the other side of law enforcement that people don't see behind the radar, that they don't see in the media, they don't see on the newspaper, Facebook, etc. Like helping the families in a different way that law enforcement is supposed to do, right? Instead of instead of seeing someone with a gun, taser, the patrol folks. Yeah,
Absolutely.
but yeah, that's just little things like that. And when we see a need in the community, whether it needs to be car seats or whether it needs to be, just kind of summarize it all up, like the community needed car seats, the community needed clarification eyes, the community needs something, public safety. Where they can come, that's what my fellow community engagement specialists do. We go out the community, we see what the community needs are, and how can we bring the resources to them.
Yeah, and that's great. And it's a great program that is needed in every community. And it's really great that St. Paul has seen that need and turned it into something very actionable. And the police department is a very appropriate place for that to be.
Yep.
And I think a good way to we're very fortunate that both you and Kang are part of the same police department. So you guys can kind of talk from the community aspect and from the active law enforcement officer aspect as well. You're both coming to us from the same city, and seeing how these programs are being facilitated within your community. Have you seen any change in the way that the community perceives the police department, or what are their reactions to these types of programs? Do you find that they're effective? Might be an obvious question.
Yeah, no, I think it is. I have a couple partners that I work with in our unit here. They work primarily with a lot of the Asian communities. So they're sworn law enforcement. Currently right now, they're kind of focused on the troubled juveniles that are in high school that are kind of going through that process of like, are they going to go down the path of being criminal, or are they going to come back and be a good citizen? So they're trying to show these other kids another aspect of, well, if you're not going to go into to become a doctor, you're not going to go down that path of maybe education, there are other trades that you can do to do a great job. And it's another aspect that no one's tapped into. So my 2 colleagues, they're focused on doing trade school, which is they're focused on bringing these kids to like carpenter school, pipe fitters, and all that stuff to show them, hey, there are other things that we can do here in local areas, that if you're not interested in going to a 4-year college, you can go to a 2-year college and focus on a skill set and just do that. So that right now they're grabbing kids from all different communities. So some of the kids that they focused on are the Asian community. So they go out there each week now. I think in the next couple of months, they're going to progressively do more. So it's almost like summer school, but it shows them that there are other trades in the United States that you can focus on. And the connection with law enforcement too is, if you don't want to be a carpenter or a pipe fitter, I think law enforcement is great. It's a 2 degree in Minnesota. You do that, then kind of like what Victor said, you go through a program, and once you pass, you take your tests, and you're eligible to become an officer in Minnesota. It opens up the door for you to go anywhere in Minnesota. So not only that, I think our organization, St. Paul PD, we work hand in hand, mainly because most of our presidents in our organization have come from St. Paul. So it's like tied in stone that if you want to do good, come to St. Paul. Potentially, you might be the president of this organization. And also, not only that, I think St. Paul kind of wants to promote leadership and also to promote people like our organization so that we can gain more officers into our association and also for the department.
I mean, they kind of answered, like perfectly answered it, right? But I think one thing I would like to add is, even especially now working with youth and just getting them like out of those areas that they shouldn't be in the first place. Just finding different avenues for them to be. Like we'll do weekly, like right now we're on the process right now of creating this like huge web, a network of different lists of organizations that, if a kid that we see, like our colleagues see, right, that obviously are in that troubled at-risk spot, how can we assess that youth and give them the right resources at the right time before they do something, that they shouldn't be doing, right? And we're gonna be there because sometimes these kids don't have what they have, like a great structure maybe at home or either at school. But what are these resources that we can, like, can we give them, a group session, a restorative justice circle? Like, can they talk through their feelings and find a bond with someone in order so they don't have to rely on their quote unquote friends, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Definitely.
But yeah.
Excellent. Perfect. And I think looking forward, kind of the way that we're going to end this discussion today is looking forward to the future, where hopefully we have more AAPI representation in our departments, where we're seeing that 25% of the population that's spread out between the West Coast and Northeast, finding that type of representation that NAPOA provides and things like that. But kind of the way to start that is by getting into local departments, and some local departments may just not know where to start. So Shane, I'll start with you, but I'll ask this same question to all three of our panelists. What are some ways that you would encourage departments around the country to support their local AAPI communities and people who may be from the AAPI community who may want to become law enforcement officers?
Again, just reach, if those communities have an Asian commerce, that's a great way to start, right? They will have connections of business leaders and community leaders. That is probably the best way to start. You build a relationship there, and they can do the introduction. When they have the community outreach days or whatever, you can send people there. But that's probably the best way to start. Again, we're talking outside of major cities, major population centers like, New York, LA, Minnesota, Houston, right? But if you're talking about like small towns and rural cities, 100%, that's the way to go. Because even for me, I think for all of us here, outside of our communities, we don't really know much, to be honest. And I'm reading the name of an officer who's going to be killed in line of duty. I'm reading his name. I had no idea that there's a Vietnamese officer in Iowa, right? We did have a couple officers reach out to us from Omaha, Nebraska a few years ago, and there's 3 in their department. Well, 3 in the area, right? From I think 1 or 2 in Omaha Police Department, and then 1 in the sheriff's office. That's a good example, right? They reached out to us. They found us online. And they need more help on recruiting as well, because they see their Asian communities growing as well. They're about 2% there in the Omaha area, and is only growing. So my suggestion would be reach out to the Asian leaders to build that trust in that forum and go from there.
King?
Yeah, I agree with Shane. Going on that level, like we're in Minnesota, so Twin Cities, it's pretty populated, very dense in the community. We've had people reach out from Wisconsin, from either Asian background or Hmong background, asking us, how do we start one in Wisconsin? And I told them it's fairly easy. Get your nonprofit 503 CP thing started. On top of that, making sure that you guys are connected with the other people in that community. Their biggest strength is kind of like what Shane said. They're very strong together, but it's just that their departments are so far away that they want to do the Wisconsin Asian Peace Officer Association. They're just so far away that if they're going to have a meeting amongst their group, two groups might be 2 hours away, and they're going to probably have to do Zoom meetings or anything related to online only. So the hardest thing is that how can we connect with those folks? They want to start one. They've reached out. It's just that we're too far away in Minnesota. They're like Milwaukee PD has a lot of Asian officers there. Madison, all the other smaller communities around Milwaukee that have Asian officers, they want to start one. It's just, how do you start one, and how do you be the first one to actually start that organization and drive the train, drive the bus, so that all the people in that community can jump on, or even the officers in that community can jump on. So they're doing a great job recruiting there. It's just that, can they get a bigger umbrella on top of them so that they can come together as a stronger group?
And Victor?
I would say having departments hire a community like specialist, right? Someone that can go something that can go in the field without a uniform, or sometimes had to be in uniform, but it's strategic how we do it here. But someone that can go out in the community while officers are doing, patrol, while they're investigating cases, right? And just have that dedicated person just like go one-on-one and see what the community needs are, and just if what I'm going to say is this, like, there's so many I could talk about this all day, but like the biggest support that that every community needs is someone in-house at the department that they can trust and rely to call, that can call, that has a direct line to upper to senior leadership, to other officers, to other units, other departments. Just having that one dedicated person for that community, just be like a resource that they can tap into.
Absolutely. And I think that's a great way to kind of summarize everything that we've talked about here. Really being a voice for the AAPI community, both officers that are serving in our departments and for the community at large, having that kind of voice within our departments, the strength of these organizations like the Minnesota Asian Peace Officers Association and NAPOA, which is the National Asian Peace Officers Association, for anybody who may have missed that earlier. All of these kinds of resources that are out there, and just figuring out how to get started and take that leap and really be that voice for these communities. So I want to thank all three of you for being here today, and taking the time to speak with us and our audience about your experiences in the law enforcement field, about the experience of AAPI officers in our departments across the country, and all of the resources that all three of you are making available for the members of your communities and nationwide as a whole. So I want to thank you all today. Any final words before we close? Or not?
I just want to thank you for the opportunity. I think our biggest struggle as a national organization that represents these chapters is, outside of our chapters, no one knows us, right? And yeah, we have a Facebook account, we have an Instagram account, we have a nice website now, but that doesn't really do it. Being present to these functions like the police memorial, right, the candlelight visual, being present at the IACP, being more active in things like that, but also having the opportunity from your organization to highlight us. That's huge, because without organizations like yours, we could not reach that 25% that is being not represented. Even walking walking around during the ICP, I was stopping every Asian person there, like, hey, are you a cop? You know, did you ever hear of NAPOA? And most of them, all of them never heard of us, and that's a sad thing. And that's our fault as an organization. And, that's something that we're changing now. We're pushing out, we're being more aggressive, but without organizations like yours highlighting us, this is another way of, promoting Asians in law enforcement. But I do want to make one comment about that. You know, yes, we're Asians, we're in law enforcement. We just want to serve. We don't want to be known as the Asian cop. We don't want to be known as the Hmong cop. We just want to be accepted. And in this current climate we're in, that's all we ever wanted, is just to be accepted. And we struggle with that in our own communities, because again, the Korean community, Chinese Korean communities, if you're not a doctor or a CPA, you're a bad Asian, right? Quote unquote. I think a lot of the Asians, even Indians and, everyone else, it's kind of the same way. We get a lot of slack from our own communities because they look down on policing, but they all need policing, and if you want to make change, this is one way of doing it, hands on. But that's all we ever wanted, was just to be accepted as law enforcement.
Yeah, I'll just end on a few words here. And Shane hit it on the head, saying we have different traits in our community. Some people are meant to be doctors, lawyers, people in the mayors, or even representatives of the community. Some people are meant to be law enforcement officers. I think that we've chosen our great path. And also, not only that, I think we want to show as officers in the Asian American community that we can also do everything just as well. So I think our organization in Minnesota has promoted trying to get into specialty units, doing special tasks, being on the SWAT team, negotiators, K9, everything you can think of. And I think from the time I've been with this organization, we've progressed and gotten a lot of our officers promoted, and also going into those specialty units. Like, for instance, our head trainer and K9 trainer in Minnesota, or St. Paul, is one of our members. He's an Asian officer that grew up in the inner city, and then he went down the path of law enforcement, became a K9 handler, and now he's the head trainer for St. Paul Police Department. So I'm on the SWAT team for St. Paul. I was the only Asian guy for a couple of years, but now we have more Asian officers joining, and I want to promote that so that we can go into that field. Don't be scared to put into it. Do it. You never know what's going to happen.
Victor? Yeah.
Representation matters. That's the essential idea of it. Shane and King, they said they both hit the nail on the head. Representation matters. Just making sure that if you really want to connect with your community, make sure you have someone in-house who is part of that community. And I'm not just saying like just hire someone who looks like the community, but find the right person for the community. Like me and my fellow colleagues always say, like, yes, you can always hire some person that looks like them, or looks like us, looks like me, but is that person the best person to represent me at the table? Right.
Absolutely. Representation definitely matters. And I think we've really summarized that very well. Or those are great words to summarize the discussion that we've had today. And again, I want to thank all three of you for taking the time to speak with us today. I think this has been a really great discussion, and will hopefully be very helpful for our audience and all of our viewers out there to see that representation within our communities. So I want to thank you all. I want to thank Target for providing us the space to talk about today's topic. And I want to wish everybody who's watching a happy AAPI Heritage Month. We're really happy to be celebrating with you this year, and hopefully we will for years to come. So thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for joining us for Bridging the Badge, Strengthening Asian American Community Trust in Law Enforcement. I'd like to thank our panelists for sharing their experience with us today for this incredibly important conversation. I would also like to extend a special thank you to Target for sponsoring tonight's program. The National Law Enforcement Museum is committed to telling the stories of American law enforcement. With your support, we make programs like this possible, and we appreciate that you took the time to join us. Additionally, if you ever find yourself in Washington, D.C., we hope that you will visit the National Law Enforcement Museum at 444 E Street Northwest.